A linear equation, aka a straight line, is represented by the equation y is equal to mx plus b. Now really, there's two main problems that are around this equation. You're either trying to create the equation, you're either trying to find m, the slope, and trying to find b, the y-intercept, to create the equation, or you are given the equation and you are using the equation to find the value of x or to find the value of y. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the latter, which is I'm going to be giving you either an x or a y value, and you're going to be using a linear equation to find out what the missing value is. The first two-step linear equation that we're going to be looking at is going to be 4x plus 3. Keep in mind that any variable, an x and a y, is just a placeholder until we figure out what the actual known value is. In this instance, we are actually given the value of x is equal to 5, and this is going to help us find our missing value of y, because we have no idea what y is equal to yet. Our first step is to rewrite this equation. We got y is equal to 4, and instead of x, now because we know what x is equal to, we're going to plug in the actual value of x, which is 5. And plus 3. Now that we have our equation set up, we can actually go into the two steps to solve for our y value. Again, this is the easier one typically because all the numbers are at one side. The variable y is already isolated, so all we have to do is finish up this math using our order of operations. Starting with order of operations, we do not have any parentheses, nor do we have any exponents, so we're going to go straight down to multiplication and division. The first multiplication problem we have is 4 multiplied by our 5. 4 multiplied by 5 does give us 20. Nothing happens with the rest of the equation, so all the other parts just kind of shift straight down. So we're going to have plus 3 come straight down, and our y value comes straight down. So we have y is equal to 20 plus 3. Now that we're done with multiplication and division in the problem, we can now look at doing the addition and subtraction. We simply have 20 plus 3 at this point, giving us our y value is equal to 23. So our y value up here comes out to be 23. This is how you're able to use an x value to find your y value. Simply by plugging this guy in first, and then following your order of operations. All right, so we're going to do the same problem, except this time, instead of giving us an x value, the problem has given us a y value. And we're going to figure this out in a very similar fashion, where we plug in the value and solve for a missing variable. We have y is equal to 4x plus 3. We once again start off by setting up our equation by putting in the values that we do know. I know that this is equal to 19. So we're going to start this off by 19 is equal to 4x plus 3. Now the challenge of this, or the difference between giving us a y value and giving us the x value, is that when we are given the y value, the x value is not isolated, it's not alone. And that's a problem, because our answer at the very end of this, our goal, is for x to be equal to some number here. Notice there's nothing around the x. X is not being multiplied by anything, x is not adding to anything, it's just x all by itself. So we need to isolate that variable. To do that, we need to get rid of the addition problem, and we need to get rid of the multiplication problem. To get rid of an operation, you're going to do something called using the inverse operation. It's kind of like its opposite. The first thing we're going to do, the last problem we did, the first step was to multiply, but this time we are actually going to be looking at addition or subtraction. And whether you add or subtract is really dependent on this. We need the opposite of plus 3. So what's the opposite of adding 3? The opposite of adding 3 is going to be subtracting 3, minus 3. When you are working with an equation works just like a scale, where if you take some off of one side of the scale, if I take 3 off of this side of the scale is very naturally going to tilt in one direction. and that's not what we want. We want the scale to stay balanced, otherwise it's no longer equal. This would change to a greater than or less than sign, and our whole equation gets ruined. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that anytime we remove, add, multiply, divide one side, we are going to maintain that equality by also doing it to the other side, the same amount to both sides. Once again, if you think of a scale, if I take 5 coins off of one side, I need to take 5 coins off of the other side to maintain that balance. If I divide or cut in half the amount on this side, I need to cut in half the amount on this side to maintain my balance, okay? So keep that in mind as we go forward. So once again, using that inverse operation to get rid of this 3. 3 minus 3 cancels out. That just gives us a nice even 0. We then have 19 minus 3, which is going to be 16, is equal to 4x. Now the 4x just comes down. We do not need to subtract the 3 from the 4x because we've already taken the 3 from this side here, okay? We have 4x is now equal to 16. Our second step is then the multiply or divide. And again, that's going to depend on what's actually happening to the x. In this situation, we have 4 multiplied by x. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 4? The opposite of that's going to be dividing by 4. We're going to divide this by 4, and once again, we do need to make sure to maintain that balance, that equilibrium, we divide both sides by 4. 4 divided by 4 cancels out, so this is no longer 4. We are now left with only x on that side, which is wonderful. That's exactly what we want down here. We're left with just x. On my left-hand side, I have 16 over 4. You could leave this as a top-heavy fraction if you really want to, or you can just do the math. You have 16 divided by 4, which should give you the number 4. And so we find that x is equal to 4. Hooray! To reiterate, a linear equation, aka a straight line, is represented by the equation y is equal to mx plus b. Your problems are going to resolve, all of your problems are going to resolve, even outside of school. No, I'm kidding. They're only going to revolve around either creating the equation, finding m and finding b, or using an equation that's already provided for you to find x and y. You may also have problems that conjoin those two, where you need to create an equation and then use that equation to find a missing value. That can happen as well. This lesson was very much rooted in algebra, in which we were taking unknown values, for example, a missing x or a missing y, and we were finding that value by using what we did know, taking what we know, and finding what we don't know about it. And that's a very big key part of algebra, is using logical reasoning to be able to put all of that together. I don't know how I'm supposed to end this. Goodbye.